And then once you are launched and you start gathering some results from how your user is actually behaving, it's really important to keep an eye on that really quite regularly and make sure that different teams are involved in giving and sharing that user experience insight.
Excited to be joined today by Rebecca and Martin from UX and Why. I'm going to get you both to introduce yourselves for this episode of the Master Your Business podcast. We're streaming live right now to LinkedIn and Facebook and all of the places. And what we're going to be talking about is UX and why you need to know what it is for seamless customer experiences. So Rebecca, please introduce yourself. Tell us who you are.
Great. Thanks, Deirdre. Hi, everybody. Good morning. So I'm Rebecca. I am a user experience specialist. So I've been working in user experience for about 15 years plus across many types of industries, FMCG, recruitment, travel. And most recently, I've been in Google as a UX consultant for EMEA as well. So delighted to be here and to share some of my tips and advice on how we can get started with customer experience.
Yes, I'm so excited to learn from you, Rebecca, because we had a chat, just an introductory chat, folks, and Rebecca blew me away. I'm like, I have to get you on the podcast. So I'm really excited about this whole chat and discussion and to learn more about UX. But UX and Why is not run by you alone. It's also run by Martin. So Martin, please introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about you.
Great. Yeah. Hi. Great to be here in the show. Thanks for having us. So my name's Martin. I'm very similar to Rebecca. I've been UX expert for a long time. I'm around for 15 years in this space as well. So I do have a background of design, and I've also worked with Rebecca in the same team at Google. So we've been both senior UX consultants, and we consulted business across EMEA. I did have a bit of a field of expertise around sustainability and accessibility, and was focusing on Central Europe clients. So that was pretty interesting as well. So pleased to be here.
Cool. That sounds fascinating. And I can't wait to learn more about all of those things and how it's going to help professional service providers in their business. Because at the end of the day, that's what this show is all about. We're all looking to master our businesses. We all want to help people and make more money while we're doing it. And, when we do that, that's what makes the world keep going round, really. And when we make money, it means we can serve our communities, we can serve society, we can make things better for our families. But it's not as easy as just showing up and selling things. It does come down to certain things like making a good user experience. So that's what UX is, but that UX stands for user experience for anybody who doesn't know. Rebecca, I'm going to come to you and just ask you to explain what exactly is UX and why should people care about it?
Yeah, so great question. So UX, quite rightly, as you said, Deirdre, stands for user experience. And what that means is essentially how the user feels when they're either on your website or on your app and they're experiencing your product or your service, right? That's really what it means. So on the one hand, you can have a really good user experience, which would mean that a user is finding it really easy and really enjoyable and really memorable, your user experience of your brand and or your product or service. But on the other hand, we can also have a really bad user experience, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, where you might be online trying to purchase a product or service and you're getting a bit frustrated and the process perhaps is a bit long or a bit complicated. And that has repercussions and consequences to our brand and our service, right? So it's really about understanding what's a good and a bad user experience and making sure that as brands, we're very conscious of that and we're working towards creating a better user experience all the time.
I love that. And I think sometimes when it comes to user experience, does user experience relate just to websites? Like, where does it apply in business?
Yeah, so it really applies to every touch point of your business. We have to remember that as a user, we experience your brand as one voice, as one experience, right? So that can be anything from your website or your app to your store to, any advertising that you do. That is all one user experience from the user's point of view, even though from a business point of view, we all work in our different teams working on the different areas, but we really have to remember that it should be one cohesive message for the user because that's how they experience it.
Okay. And I think that's interesting because, sometimes what happens in my experience is, and don't shoot me for this, folks, if you're watching, is that the experience comes after the fact. First thing is, oh, I've got this product or service and I want to share it with the world. And oh, I'm just going to put it out there and what happens. But what should happen? And yeah, what should happen?
Yeah, so definitely. I definitely see that a lot. And so, really, what we should be doing is we should be thinking about the user experience from the very beginning, right? So, when we're designing our website, we should be taking into account how can we get our message across and our product and service across? Of course, that's our main focus. But we also need to make sure that it's easy for the user to find the products that they want. It's easy for the user to navigate through our website and find what they need, whether it be buy the product itself or sign up for the newsletter or reach checkout. All of those things need to be considered from the very beginning of creating your website or your app. And then once you are launched and you start gathering some results from how your user is actually behaving, it's really important to keep an eye on that really quite regularly and make sure that different teams are involved in giving and sharing that user experience insight. And then you start to find little nuggets of, okay, here are some pain points. Here are some abandonment points that we can optimize for the user and make better. And that's why I mentioned before, this is an ongoing process where we should look at it from the very beginning, but also continue to monitor it as well.
That makes total sense because our customers are always evolving, number one, right? And then things in the market are always changing as well. But so let's say, I know if I'm going to get my website done, it's going to cost me money. If I'm going to get my brand done, that's going to cost me money. If I want help with marketing, that's going to cost me money. And obviously UX has a cost as well. But with all of those things, there should be a value or a return on investment with them. So if somebody is watching or listening and they're a professional service provider, what is the real value of investing in user experience and UX design?
Yes. So the great thing about user experience is that it's traditionally thought of really a design framework and thinking about making your website perhaps look nice and things like that. That's how it's traditionally been understood. But actually, what we have seen and how we work in user experience and we support businesses is that we actually very much focus on the business impact of user experience, right? So there are plenty of research studies and case studies out there, and I can definitely share them after this, no problem, if anybody would like them, around how user experience actually is directly correlated to business impact. Now, when I say business impact, sales, conversion rate, revenue, return on ad spend, right? So everything that you highlighted there, Deirdre, we want a return for these businesses. So we really want you guys, these businesses to take on UX. We will focus on the business impact for them and the metrics that are important to them. And we work like that. So it's very much correlated. So anything that we put in for user experience has always been attached to a business metric, always. And that's the way that it should be. And we have seen that you can really address something very small from a user experience point of view. It doesn't have to be a big redesign or anything like that. It can be something actually very small that can be a really big win for your business. So it's really about identifying, again, as I said, those pain points and seeing what we can optimize. And very often what we've seen is very small changes actually have big wins. So it's a great opportunity.
So you said about defining pain points. Like, what are the types of pain points? And then when you fix them, what sort of other metrics? Like, obviously the bottom line is important, but when, what is the benefit of fixing other metrics or other pain points? I'm wondering, what are the metrics that somebody might experience if they fix the pain points? I just haven't had my coffee clearly this morning. We're a freeze out. Okay.
No problem. Yeah, so great question. So some of the pain points that we often look at is, first of all, we want to look at our user insights, right? Of what we have in each business, right? So we don't necessarily say this is what every user needs and every business needs in their user experience. We really have to look at your individual business and the insights that you have on your users. And we can help you with that if that's of need as well. But what we really want to look at is where are the abandonment points, where are the exit points, where are the pain points? And we can see a lot of that through analytics tools, for example, or heat map tools, or user research tools as well. That gives us a huge amount of insight as to where those pain points are. Once we start out,
one thing, okay, so for people listening, right, I know what abandonment rates are. I know what exit rates are. I know what heat maps are, but not everybody does. So Can you explain what those things are in more detail, please, Rebecca? Imagine the people listening have no idea what you're talking about, and because they probably don't, or maybe they do, just in case.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sorry, I got away with my own tools there. Yeah, so these tools are essentially platforms that you can many are free, and you can use them to plug into your website essentially, and they will start to generate data and insights on how your user behaves when they go onto your website or to your app. So they will tell you when they visit your homepage, when they reach your product page and they may leave, for example, or they reach your form on your website, but they don't quite complete it. And all those little nuggets of information is what can be gathered through all these different tools. As I've explained, it really gives you great insight as to where your users really are having that bad experience that I mentioned initially, and where we can start to identify and fix those problems.
That makes total sense, because like that, if somebody's fallen off then, so is this what you're saying? So I'm clear, is that if somebody's on my website and I can monitor what they're doing on their website and then see why did they click out on my website or where they clicked out. Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And so separate to my website, where else then can I look at what the pain points are and what can I do to fix them?
Yeah. So there's many ways to see where those pain points are, right? So as I said, there's analytics tools like Google Analytics, for example, right? That you can connect into your website, and it's a very simple plugin, and the tool starts to generate data for you to see where your users are falling, right? That's what we would call, let's say, quantitative data, right? So really numbers data that gives you insight as to, as we said, how many users are leaving, coming, going, filling your form, maybe not. There's the other side of research, which is also very interesting, which is what we would call user research or qualitative research. And that's really more answering the why, right? So the analytic and the quantitative research answers the what. And the why is also a really important piece. So that's where the qualitative research comes in. And that's where you really get really hands-on with your users. So you actually start to talk to your users, really talk to them, like in an interview style or in a focus group style. It really just means gather a couple of your users or your customers, or a profile of those users and customers that represent your customer, and just have a chat with them. Talk to them about what's their experience on your website. How did they find purchasing a product or a service with you? Did they have any issues? Would they like to see something different? Those kind of questions, just very overarching questions to get a general sense of what their experience is on the site. And you would be amazed what they share. They really start to be very honest with you, because they really want to have a great experience, and they really want to, the reason they visited your website in the first place is because they actually want to buy from you, right? So the only reason they may leave is because of a bad user experience. So it's really handy to talk to them and get their honest opinion on what could be better for them. And then you can take those insights and see, okay, what can we optimize then on the website based on that feedback from those users?
That's so interesting. And do you know, it's funny because one of the things I like to do to relax, now don't laugh if you're listening, is I like to browse online on websites and put things in my basket. And I don't always buy the things I put in my basket, but I love to do it. And one of the things that drives me nuts on websites when I do that is where it doesn't show my cart with the number going up, or it doesn't say added to cart. That really drives me mad. And a question that comes up quite a lot, Rebecca, with my clients is where they have sent offers and prices. So sometimes they're like, Deirdre, should I put the price on my website? From your perspective and your experience, what do you think about that? Does that impact user experience, putting prices on or not, if it's services?
Yes, absolutely. When it comes to anything, any question like that, should I add prices? Should I not? Should I add an add to cart message? Should I not? This is all really comes down to testing, because every business has its own portfolio of customers, and they have individual needs and wants of your brand and your product and service. So it's really about testing it. But definitely recommend, if you're unsure about seeing whether prices is something that may hinder or benefit the experience, test it, and test it in different ways as well. Test it perhaps on certain types of products, maybe products that, you really want to encourage some sales, and you know that the price point is really good, and you're competitive, maybe that's a great test to check just for those products. And if that goes well, then maybe you could scale it and amplify that pricing strategy across your whole website, for example. That could be one way to try it.
Fantastic. I love that idea, because that's something as well that I'm always saying to people, is that think of your marketing a little bit like an experiment. And UX, to a certain extent, yes, it's part of the overall customer experience and your brand experience, but it's still an experiment because things are changing all the time. And Rebecca, something that crops up quite a lot, and I see this because I do follow a lot of things about user experience, but something that crops up that you might elaborate for me is UX and UI. What is UI and what's the difference between UX and UI exactly?
Yes. So great question. And yes, that comes up a lot because they're often paired together in the same conversations. So UX, as I explained, is the user experience, how the user feels on your website, on your app, with your brand, how they feel that experience. Is it good? Is it bad? On the UI side of things, that's what UI represents, is user interface. And that is really more about the touch points of the website. So what I mean by that is what areas of the site or the app does the user actually interact with, right? So that could be buttons, call to actions, navigation, for example, going through your menu or going through different steps of your website. That is really thinking about UI and how UI works within your site. So they often go together because to optimize a user experience, you really need to look at the user interface, right? So they go hand in hand, but they are different things.
I get it now. Okay, that makes total sense. And let's say then that I was in a situation where, and this was what we chatted about the last day when we had our off live stream conversation, Rebecca, was about user experience and websites in terms of, I'm looking at getting my own website done, folks. My website, hands up right now, is terrible. As we're recording this, it's December 2023. I have not looked at my website in so long. And I really want to get it done. And I really want it to have a fantastic user experience. And so in terms of UX design and looking at that from a website stage, I know you'd said to start at the start, but what else do I need to be mindful of if I'm hiring a UX designer, if I'm getting my website done? Like, what do I need to look out for?
Yeah. So great question. So I think it really is all about on the user and understanding who your user is, right? As I said, that's something that some businesses know very well and are very attuned with, and the teams within those businesses are very aligned. Sometimes they need a little bit of help, right? And that's where a user experience consultant or user experience designer can really help, right? So they can definitely look into, your analytics or your research, or even conduct that research for you, right? And really understand what your user needs and what they want. And yes, I said that it's definitely important to consider user experience from the very beginning. I understand that's not something that's always a priority, and we don't always have time and budget for that. So it's okay to look at it later, maybe when your website is launched or you've had a few years of running your business and you really want to then look at UX. That's absolutely no problem. But I think the most important thing is just to start and understand who can help you out there. And as I said, definitely a UX consultant, I think, to start with on user experience. And then once you start to implement those changes or test those changes, those optimizations that you want to do on your website, then that's when perhaps a UX designer or a web designer can come in and actually implement those changes for you, if you, of course, don't want to do them yourself. But those would be the different types of, let's say, stakeholders that would be required through the process.
Fantastic. And I think that's really clear and helpful, Rebecca. Thank you for that. Okay, now, Martin, I haven't forgotten about you. I'm going to bring you in a minute. But just before we do, and I move away from you, Rebecca, what would you say if you were to give 3 to 5 tips for people watching or listening that they need to be mindful of when it comes to UX, user experience?
Yes, definitely. So I would say my 3 tips are: first, have a little dig around internally and just see, what do you know about your user? Anything at all. Whether you have analytics tools or not, it doesn't really matter. Just maybe gather a few insights as to what you know about your user. Good things and bad things in terms of what their experience with your product and with your site. I would say that would be the first thing that I would look at. Once you know that, then maybe we can start to look at, what is our website and app design look like? Is it device friendly? And what I mean by that is, we all know that most of us now have very busy lifestyles, and a lot of us are on mobile all the time and often buy and purchase on mobile. So it's my second tip would be definitely make sure that your website and your app naturally would be designed for the desktop experience and the mobile experience, right? And really considering those differences. That's really important. And I would say my third and last tip then would be that if you have an e-commerce website, make sure that your e-commerce is really simple and easy to use, right? Let's avoid long forms, complicated forms or processes. Let's make it really easy for the user to select their product and pay for that product really quickly and easily. That's really what our users want. So making sure that that's really easy to do. And on the other hand, if you don't have an e-commerce website or you have a lead generation website, for example, a website where a user may need a quote for a product or service, make sure that that's also really easy and simple to navigate and to reach the end process for.
Okay, cool, Rebecca. That's really good. And do you know what? It's something I'm always saying on the podcast and to my clients, which is the first thing you have to do is know your audience. You have to know your audience. So that's literally what you're saying as well. Look internally. What do you know about your user? And then the second thing, again, yeah, I completely agree. Like I'm always on my phone. Even when I'm at my desk, I'm still like picking up my phone and doing stuff on my phone because sometimes it's just an easier experience. And like you referred to apps, like a lot of companies now have apps or software tools and things. So yeah, that's really handy. And then lastly, e-commerce, make sure it's easy to use. And again, just to be clear, if I'm a service provider, is my website technically an e-commerce if people can purchase via my website? Like what constitutes an e-commerce website?
Yeah, so an e-commerce website is essentially any website where you can buy a product or service on.
Okay. So even if it's like book a 1 hour coaching call, that's considered an e-commerce website?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, let's bring Martin in here now. Martin has been patiently sitting in the background, listening to everything Rebecca's been saying. And Martin, before I tuck in and start asking you loads of questions about UX, have you anything to add to what Rebecca's been talking?
I think it was really great that all the points that Rebecca pointed out, and there was a lot of super important things in it. I think there isn't too much to add. I'm more from the design background, as I said earlier. So what I always emphasize as well is that what we said earlier, that the user interface is really important, of course. And so it really is a matter of also looking at all the different elements. And Rebecca said that before. Are they designed in a way that is aligned with the goals that you have with a website, right? So we were talking about selling a product. So really making sure that this button stands out where you put it to the cart, right? Really making the font readable, that the contrast is good, and all these things. There are a lot of bits that you can look in the details and in the user interface itself as well. So maybe that's a last point, just that comes from my experience and that I always love to talk about when it comes to those design decisions and optimizations. And I think it's an ongoing process as well. So this is something you don't like just do in an afternoon and you're done. It's something that you would like to do over time and get better and better at it. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're really talking my language now too, Martin, because that design part I think is also important, and that impacts user experience right the way through different channels as well. So even off your website and into social media. And I mean, I've seen an example this year where actually it was another marketing agency. I'm not going to name names or throw rocks at my enemies, but what they did was they were designing content for one of their clients, and their content was the background was pink and the writing was green, and their target audience were men. And that contrast from an accessibility, I could hardly read it. I was like,
yeah,
at my screen like this, going, what?
Honestly.
And I took the colors and I put them in and I looked at it, and from an accessibility perspective, it was really bad. And
Yeah.
that's design. And I think those things have a bigger impact than people realize. But let's say in terms of the impact those things have, what's your experience with that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. There are a lot of design decisions you can do in the wrong way. And so when we come in as consultants, we look at them and we do have studies that what Rebecca said before, even small changes do have a huge effect. So what we see now a lot, all these sort of nice designs that look great on the eye for, say, a regular sighted person, right? Like this light gray on a white background. It looks great. And we've seen like a lot of big companies doing it in the last year, but now there's more of a shift. We really look into, is this actually readable? Does this work for someone who is a bit older, maybe than myself, maybe as a designer, or someone that has some issues maybe with like sight loss or something like that. All of that is important. And we've seen studies that even if you improve the font size or the contrast of important things like important descriptions of a product or a button, as I said before, that you can really elevate that conversion rate, that ratio of how many people look at that content and then how many of them actually click on something and take action on it. And this kind of ratio that we call a conversion rate, that really goes up. And there are big wins to make through that. So they can go up like by 10 or even more percent, which is huge if you consider that you have a considerable traffic on the page, visitors coming to your page. And if you're able to move this even by 5%, people looking at it and then clicking or taking an action, this is a massive win, obviously, for whatever you're trying to achieve on the page there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just in case I wasn't clear, folks, with what I'm talking about, that pink and the green that I was referring to, it's for color blindness. It's typically men tend to be, I don't know, there's quite a high percentage. Is it a third or a sixth? I can't remember, of all men are colorblind. And so the color is being used for a company whose target audience is men. It just didn't work, right? And yeah, I won't get into it, but I was like, that's so frustrating for that poor client who's paying a company to do this for them. And so, yeah, they clearly weren't up on UX. And it's great that I'm talking to you, and everybody listening is going to be like, woohoo, up here with UX. So, Martin, tell us about some of the trends that have emerged in 2023, or some shifts in terms of user experience that people should watch out for. And even, I don't know, can you preempt what's happening in 2024?
Yeah, very interesting question. Thanks for bringing this up. I think it's very exciting times for UX and then also marketing, we should say as well. Marketing is related to a certain extent to UX as well. I think there were a lot of things going on this year already, and I'd love to talk a bit more about what we think next year will happen or is important. A bit of a crystal ball, of course, but I'll try a few things there. So when we look at this year, maybe taking back to what we've seen, I think there have been huge shifts, and I guess it's no big news here. AI is just one of the most important topics we've seen here. AI, which stands for artificial intelligence. Sorry for maybe someone not being familiar with it, but it had been all over the place, I think, this year in media and press and everywhere. So this is, of course, a huge shift for all industries, and there are no exceptions for marketing or UX. It has changed a lot, like how people work, right? And we've seen it being used like in a commercial way. So AI has been there for many years, but now with OpenAI AI and the ChatGPT being released there, it has just commercially so much more spread into a mass audience. And so this has also changed how marketing and UX works. So there's a lot in there which you could really consider for the work, where it was tedious before and just hard to get across. And now AI can really help you in particular bits, for example, like text generation, right? Of like a marketing campaign or that kind of website text that you're looking at. Can also be a piece of inspiration for you, where you can really interact like with ChatGPT, a bit like an assistant, right? And ask question, prompt it to certain bits you just can't really get your head around, and then it will answer with some good insights for you and help you get it over the line. So there's a huge shift in working. So a lot of these kind of more time intense tasks are now being shifted more towards AI and those tools that can help you. And it goes further into generative AI, where we can really now see that even images are being generated by AI. And so some names have been around here for some time now, like Midjourney and things like that, or LE. So all of them are great as well to come up even with images. So imagine that being used in your marketing with that image, that text that just fits your audience. It's just a great way of accelerating and then also being even more targeted for exactly those persons that you want to reach. And it's a huge help as well to come up with your ad text, for example. Say you run Google Ads, which a lot of people do it currently. like, it's just great. Just run it through that tool, right? And trying different value propositions, trying to feed AI tools with your customer profile that you have. And it will suddenly generate very much focused texts that are really targeted. And once you've got, for example, these kind of ads running well and the right people are coming to a website, right? It ties back to what Rebecca said earlier. Then take a look like how people perform on your website. And if that traffic converts in those areas that you really want them to act. And that's just a fantastic place to start off. And obviously, we are very happy to help you there because you see that traffic coming through, but then some of them don't convert that well to a goal that you had in mind. And that would boost your business. This is the space where we are acting, and we're trying really to help to get you better at that.
Fantastic. I think that's really interesting as well in terms of AI with copy and text. And we have done an episode, it was called ChatGPT and the Rise of the Machines. And recently, more and more recently, I find myself using Bard over ChatGPT and sometimes actually using ChatGPT and Bard together. And then like playing one off of the other, I find that works really well. That's a whole other episode, I think, that we could record just about AI. And Martin, let's say with regards to websites, right? I feel, okay, I've got a really good business. My business is quite successful. And I see websites where people have chatbots and things like that. And I'm wondering, is that a space I need to get into for my business? And if I did, what would that look like? How do they work? Especially when I'm service-based and sometimes my solutions are bespoke for clients. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. We should understand it as a tool that just helps us do our job easier, quicker, and maybe with more personalization and more targeted content. So when we talk about a chatbot, I think that's really helpful. It is a tool that can just really deliver like good answers in the first place. I think there are some limitations, right? So it's probably not an out of the box experience that's great. What you would usually want with a good chatbot when it's powered by AI is that it's also trained on your data, trained on like the knowledge base that you have. So when, say, it's on your website and the customer will interact with this chatbot, it should really provide you like good answers that are helpful. I think we've all been there where we interacted with the chatbot and it was just frustrating because it only gave us like each time we asked questions, the same 3 options to choose from. And I think this is where it's not very helpful. But when this bot is trained on your data, and there are tools out there where you can feed your internal data into, and it's kind of in a private space for your own company, like on your own company servers there, then it suddenly generates very insightful answers. And obviously, also in the service business, can be very helpful because it saves you time to write those emails to customers or even jump on a call because the tool already knows the basics, right? And then when it comes to a point where it gets really to the tough questions, it's fair to say this chatbot is not the perfect channel and then maybe hop on a call. But you get so much out of it when it comes to qualifying this kind of requests you get and these first kind of low level asks some people might have, or just a visitor interested in your products, like these easy requests, it could probably be well handled by it.
That's so handy because at the end of the day, as business owners, everybody's so busy and it's trying to find what is the best way to invest your money so you get maximum return on investment. So like, yes, if it can save you time by answering questions, that makes total sense to do that. Well, let's say then, is there a way to measure that and analyze the things that are happening in that way? Like using AI, is there data analysis or insights that can be gathered to see how many conversations are being had? Again, where along that journey then people might be abandoning the journey and stuff.
Yeah, that's a very good question as well. It comes down again to tracking, right? And we talked about this before. Make sure that you have a tool in place that does tracking for you. And when you use these bots, they should come as well with some, let's say, back end where you log in as a business and you can see like how often is it used. You might also see what type of questions are asked there a lot. So I think that's an important piece as well to just understand a bit how it is used. And then when it comes to how can I measure the return on invest if I invest in a tool like that, I think is really a consideration where you should look at your business metrics, right? For example, say you would have a call center, right? For a bigger company, like you could measure like how many less calls you get in the first place there after using a chatbot that actually delivers helpful answers. So if you save costs and time on that end, and it's getting shifted more towards like an automated tool or a bot, there's a lot of money to be saved. But then you could also, for smaller businesses, measure that again by the emails probably you write into client on those easy requests that come in, or maybe someone that helps you on that, like the sales team, and then use that resource that gets freed for more meaningful work, right? To maybe develop with this sales team the next product, or a better way to address your client in a one-to-one situation, like maybe your most valuable clients and things like that. Right? And there you can measure like how can we shift from maybe a more like manual and dragging work towards more like a strategic work towards that. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. That's really interesting, I think, as well. And I think it does come down to what we spoke about earlier with Rebecca about that experimentation just to see what works, isn't it? And trying to figure that out. And Martin, let's say, okay, prediction again for 2024, when you polish that crystal ball and see what comes up in terms of costs and applying UX and costs of living and costs of everything right now being so exponential, what are your thoughts in terms of how that will impact UX? Will it drive it, or will people be like, no, that's something that I don't need to invest in right now? Important, but not urgent.
Yeah, it makes sense. Now, a very fair observation here. There's absolutely this financial pressure, I think, that we feel on a personal level when it comes to cost of living, inflation. We've seen really high over the last 2 years almost. And then also like on a business level, it's the same for a business, right? There's a lot of cost pressure there. And we do have different causes, right? There is inflation, there's cost of living, but there's also huge globalization, global competition in the field. There's obviously ongoing crises that we have, from climate crisis to war in Europe, like all of these points. So with that, it's interesting how it affects UX here, because we really think it's actually a benefit for UX, because companies do need to figure out that the money they spend actually has a good return, right? So when margins get tight and budgets get tighter, you really want to make sure that the people that come to you on a digital channel, on your website, maybe on your app if you have it, that they really convert well. So the money you spend on an ad, or someone like on social media telling, come to my page, if that traffic comes to your page, it's getting more and more important that you make the most out of this traffic. And it's really a streamlined experience that people have on your page. So then they come to that goal that you want them to do. Is it a newsletter sign up? Is putting that product to the cart and buying it through a great checkout and a great payment experience? All of these bits are getting more and more important as you don't have so much more money to spend on ads as it was maybe back in those days, where you said, we'll spend a lot of money in marketing campaigns. We don't look so much into what happens after this click on an ad. It will be okay. Our website is kind of all right. Well, that's not good enough anymore, because you don't have that extra money to spend. So we do see a lot of growth there. We've also seen the big tech companies doing layoffs, obviously. And then what's super exciting here is that smaller companies and startup companies are benefiting a lot from this, because they get top talent in UX, in marketing, in digital product development. And startups are now they've really done a lot of homework this year on the back of those layoffs. So they're really ready for 2024 to deliver like exceptional UX with their products. So I think we'll see a lot of great stuff in the UX space next year. And we see companies that take it more and more serious. And we see maturity going up in companies. And they are really trying to level up their game when it comes to user experience and how users are interacting with their page. We see that reaching C levels much more, and we see investments being made in, as I said, smaller and startups and also mid-sized companies that really take benefit from the job market, and that talent is out there and had been out there a lot this year.
So I think there's a big sort of, how would I describe it? I think there's people, when they're getting websites done, I think the focus is always on, oh, it looks nice, and search engine optimization. But really, I think if I need to summarize what our chat has been about today is there's so much more to that. Design is more than it just looks nice. And user experience is more than it looks nice. And I think part of it as well is it is more so, it's not just about functionality, it's about overall experience. But then when it's implemented, the return on investment can be phenomenal for a business. Probably way more than search engine optimization, because when people land on your site, they're going to convert. Am I right?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Mm.
And why do you think, I'll open this to either of you now, but why do you think like UX doesn't feature as highly as it should?
Yeah, so I think that's where it's traditionally not been known. Web design, user experience design, all those kind of topics, what you on the front end, let's say, of your website or your app, has been traditionally known as, it looks nice, it looks good enough. And there's also, I think, perhaps a lack of understanding of its potential, right? There's just so much potential to it that can be unlocked in, as we said, in very small changes having very big impact. And I think there's a little bit of just understanding in what that opportunity actually involves, right? So that's one of the reasons why we're here, to talk a little bit more about user experience and let people know really what the opportunity is there. And perhaps in these really tricky times of tight budgets and tight timelines and really focusing your effort in the right places, it's a great opportunity to take over and above perhaps investing further in ads or in other areas of your business, which are very costly and perhaps not as clear in their return.
And let's say in terms of the mistakes, Martin, that you see with websites, when you go in and you look at websites now for people, what is the most common mistake that you see repeatedly that drives you nuts?
Yeah, good question. You would be surprised like how basic sometimes things are. Like how many business are just not what we said before, like taking serious like their audience and like getting right that message across. For example, a value proposition is super important, like to be very clear why should they buy something from you or get that service from you. So that value proposition, we often see that somewhere hidden down on the website, like at the bottom third of the page. And rise, people don't always scroll to the end of your page, right? A lot of them stay on the first kind of screen, maybe the second one. So really making sure this goes up and is on the first screen there. Then also those actions we talked about, to get those actions, have the messaging, have like why you, that value proposition, but then making sure there's some action I can take on this. If I'm persuaded I want to buy your service, make sure it's super easy. I see that action, this button to go for. It's easy what it does after. Can I just maybe book an appointment with you, just like an easy calendar to click on? Can I maybe is it a bit more than just writing an email there, right? Can I maybe just put something in my card and have that as a first interaction there? So these basic things are often really not done well. And then also, we said it before, like contrast of text, light gray on a white background. This is nice for 20-year-olds. And then in a small, tiny size on their smartphone, it looks great. But if you're 60 plus and that's maybe your target audience, depends, right? But could be, then this is not the way to go. So like some of it is rather basic. And then obviously we do see maturity in some companies where it's more about the more advanced things, like getting the payment methods right, getting a seamless checkout experience where the forms are great, where you only have to input small amounts of data and get through everything very quickly. There's a lot to do, as we said, but yeah, these are probably some typical things we see.
That's really interesting as well. Like a couple of things there. I know I see this when I'm writing copy for people for websites. The thing that I see most often is, on the top left-hand side of a desktop browser, that's usually where somebody's logo goes. And that's normal. That's what people come to expect. But then it's such a waste of space and words when they've got their logo above the fold or, their business name in the middle as well. It doesn't need to be there. What needs to be there is that unique value proposition and why people should work with you. So from a words perspective, you are totally talking my language right there. Yeah, such a waste of space. And the other thing I always say is that call to action needs to be so clear and direct. Because that call to action on your homepage, that's like the cash register in the shop. When
Yes.
you want people to buy from you, you need to tell them what to do. Don't dilute the message because they're not going to take action unless you tell them what to do. So book a call, buy now, do the thing. But I suppose one of the things for me as well that I would love to be able to apply to my business and for my clients as well when I'm helping them with websites is to get them to the stage where it's nearly like that Amazon one click to buy experience. And every website I've ever looked at that's not Amazon hasn't been able to achieve that. Why can Amazon do it but nobody else? And how can the rest of us get there? Who would like to take that one?
Yeah, so I could definitely start there. So I would say what Amazon has at the moment, yes, it's known as a great user experience, and it is to a degree, but it also works for them, their brand, their audience, their customers, right? It doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So that's where I would say that, yes, Amazon, you can look at it as a benchmark, as maybe take some inspiration from it, but I wouldn't duplicate it, let's say, into your own business. And that's where we go back to the user experience and the user experience of your brand and your product and service. And that's really the one that you need to understand, right? Because for your business, it might be that you can actually, create an Amazon experience or the likes of, and it can be very successful. But it might also be that your audience and your customers don't want that kind of experience. They actually want perhaps a more detailed experience, particularly for businesses that perhaps have price points that are quite high. There is a customer or a user experience that actually expects detail and understanding of your product and service, and perhaps a longer checkout flow where they really feel safe and secure in buying what they're buying, right? Because it has a high price tag, right? So it really depends on your audience and what they need. So I would definitely encourage you, don't necessarily take the Amazons or the booking.coms as your user experience template. Look at your own audience, understand them, and optimize for what they need.
That's a great answer, I think, actually, and total paradigm shift for me, Rebecca. So thank you for creating that. But I have another question because this is actually based on user insights. So somebody asked me this once, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts were. I answered in a way. I want to hear now what you say when I asked this. So somebody said to me, "Deirdre, I have they're an online coach." And they have a Facebook community and group where they service all of their clients. And what they'd said was their clients wanted an app off of Facebook. They didn't want to be logging into Facebook because they end up down the scroll hole and things get lost, and they wanted everything in one place. So the client went off and built an app based on the qualitative research that they'd done, only to find that now that they have the app, they can't get their clients off of Facebook and onto the app. So where do you draw the line with what people say they want and, what they actually need?
Yes, I can start here. It often is the case that users don't know what they want or what they need, right? So it's really up to us to ask them those very open questions, like we said before, in terms of qualitative research and what's their experience like, but really then aligning that with your business goals, right? And your business strategy, and making sure that the output of that, whether it be the development of an app or optimizations on your website, really end up being useful and beneficial to your users, right? In terms of how they use it, why they use it, all of those kind of questions have to be very clear to yourself as a business and to your users so that it makes sense as part of your overall user experience.
Martin, anything to add to that?
No, I like that a lot. And I think that's exactly right. If you have an app, it's a bit like you're selling a product with this app, right? As you do with your other products. And exactly what Rebecca said, make sure that you have a benefit for the app, that the users, your potential customers, or at least people looking at your brand, that they know why they should use it. So if you don't get them off from Facebook, then it seems that Facebook and the feed there or whatever you post there delivers more value to them than what you have on your app. So make sure to get them over there. And you can use another channel. Facebook is a good option to say, there are these benefits, and you might post every week one other benefit of your app and why you should use it, and then include that link to the app store and bring them over and then deliver that value on the app. If they install it, it should really give them something. Maybe the payment is super convenient. Maybe there's something with like a face recognition that you want to do in the app to boost security and enable people to do things quicker, like we've seen with banking a lot, for example. And there needs to be something that's really helpful, or use the camera maybe, so they can maybe take a photo from a product they want to return. So the return process is much easier when they have the app installed, because it feeds right into your system and it gets all streamlined for them. So these are the points where people suddenly start considering your app and going, oh yes, this is easier now. I don't need that email anymore, or I don't need like Facebook, which is a bit too clunky for that piece of interaction. And then this is where you really suddenly excite people for it and get them use it. And we also see people installing apps and deleting them pretty quickly. It happens to many apps because they don't deliver the value in the app. So before you go in and just do an app because everyone does it, make sure you know what you're doing, what the benefits are, and make it a good app, right? So it's really useful. And some apps do one thing really good, like WhatsApp does just text messages really well, and maybe voice messages. And that's just how they got known worldwide. And now they are like $1 billion business. So it's about doing one thing really well instead of trying to do everything somehow, and then nothing really works at the end.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Again, you're talking my language, Martin. Seriously. We recorded an episode previously as well about simplicity and like doing one thing so well. And my response to that person who'd asked me about designing the app was, for future and everybody else who was around, is to think about, does this add value to your ideal clients? That was exactly the answer I gave. Does this add value to your ideal clients? If it doesn't add value, but doesn't diminish or reduce or take away from the value your clients are currently experiencing, and it's cost effective for you behind the scenes, then it's worthwhile doing. But that every decision really should be centered around, does this add value, or will it maintain the current value and experience that people are getting? And if the answer is no, it doesn't do that, then it's not the right decision. And that's my approach. I'm glad to see you nodding, because I'm like, phew, thank God I gave her the right answer.
Yes, absolutely. And I would actually just add one further point as well. So what we've seen as well is that many business, have had websites for years and, are selling their products and service on their website. And then suddenly, like Martin said, suddenly the app is the trend, or the app is what's being asked for. So they develop an app that does almost the exact same as your website. So I would also just consider, like we said at the very beginning, users experience your brand and your product and your service as one, right? As one holistic message and one holistic brand. So if you're going to have multiple touch points like websites or apps or other things, make sure that they differentiate between themselves, as well as having their own individual value, so that they all contribute to the user experience.
And I think, again, part of this that I'm always talking about is that that's the whole omni-channel approach, folks. It's where that experience feels the same, whether they meet you in person, if they walk into your office or your shop, as that experience feels online or in the app you were talking about, Rebecca. I love that. Yeah. Again, totally talking my language. Do you see why I brought these on the show, folks? They're super. Okay, so we better wrap up, because I would keep talking to you all day and you have better things to be doing. So finally, as we wrap up, let me just ask you, Martin, I didn't come to you for top tips as we wrap up. Do you have anything else to add by way of top tips, practical things that people can take away and go and apply in their business?
Yeah, I think we talked about some really important things to get it right. Like stuff we said earlier, look at the design, look at your value propositions, the actions. I think that was emphasized quite a few times. That is simple to fix, but do get it right. I think do some of the qualitative research. It is very important to understand the why behind the analytics data that you see. We see a lot of customers having some analytics tool in place, but then understanding why a customer acts like, or what they say to you is really important. So consider an interview or some sort of, maybe even a user testing. There are even now platforms out there where you can do that remotely. Very handy. I think this is very important to do. And then maybe there's one last bit I would add to some of the basics, and that is what we see now for 2024 as a trend as well. Look a bit more into accessibility. I want to touch on that point because We do see that there's legislation coming. The EU has legislation in place for 2025, where all businesses are required to have accessible websites. So to spend a bit of time there to really look at those contrasts, those font sizes, make sure like elderly people can read that we talked about and that have a color blindness. So making sure those colors work together. Men are just a bit more prone to that than women. That's just what it is. So very important on that, especially if your audience is male or more male than female. So super interesting that. So I think these are a few points really to look out for. And the catalog is long, I would say, but maybe something's top of my mind, what I would start with. And then again, we're always happy to dive deeper with you if there's more you want to explore and get better at it.
I love that. And thanks for sharing those. So yeah, I think user testing, and that's the experiment piece, the qualitative research, which is literally having conversations with your people. And then that accessibility piece. I'm with you on that. Okay, we will wrap up now, but tell us what is coming up for Rebecca and Martin and UX and Y in 2024. What's happening for you guys?
Yeah, so there's lots going on. So we are actually now developing some new offerings where we actually want to specifically help our customers with topics like accessibility, right? Because we have regulation that's coming in to place very soon. And it's a topic that a lot of businesses need support with. It's not very well known, and the requirements of what you need on your website can be a little bit challenging. So we're here to help with that, and we're developing some services around that. Please feel free to let us know if that's something you're interested in. And we're also looking into two other areas that also have regulations attached to them as our world changes in that way. So the other area we're also looking into is sustainability. So I think this is something that has definitely been around for quite a while. We're probably all quite familiar with it in terms of just the regulations of being a sustainable business, right? So making sure that our carbon footprint is low, that we're providing sustainable offerings. We are a sustainable business in how we run. So we really want to help also businesses make sure that if they want to convey that message of being a sustainable business or encouraging users to make greener choices with our products and services, that we can help you create a user experience around that, which is really, really important as well. And the last piece also that I wanted to mention was that we're also all very aware of user privacy as well, and how important that has become and is more and more becoming more prominent. Users are getting even more aware of how they're sharing their data, how that data is being managed, and they want to know and control more and more how that's being managed by businesses. And we all collect user data in different ways. So we also want to make sure that we're supporting businesses to adopt a user experience whereby we're helping businesses to collect that data that they need to collect for your business, right? So you can talk to your customers, retarget your customers, but also giving the user experience to the users of feeling safe and secure and knowledgeable of how that their data is being used on your website and your app as well. Pairing those two things together. So those are some of the things that we're working on for 2024, and we're very excited, to say the least.
Fantastic. And that's actually really topical right now, because the next guest I'm interviewing for the show is a GDPR specialist. So there you go.
Perfect.
And again, it's so important. That data is so important because, as Warren Buffett famously said, it takes 20 years to build your reputation and seconds to lose it. So if you're not minding your data, it can be very damaging to your reputation if something were to go wrong. So fantastic to hear you guys are supporting people with that as well. Okay, folks. So I'm going to share in the show notes where everybody can find you. And you have very generously given me a promo code for some workshops you're doing. Do you want to just quickly share what those workshops are and what they're about?
Yes, so we wanted to give a little Christmas present, New Year present to everyone, if you're interested in. So we have a number of services where we can help you to look at your user experience, audit that user experience, and give you some really top recommendations for your business to improve those metrics that are important to you. So we have a little promo code, which is audit10, AUDIT 10. And if you can contact us either via LinkedIn or via the show notes that Deirdre will share, and share that code with us, we'll definitely give you that 10% discount on any of the offerings that you would like to use. So we're more than happy to help you get kickstarted with great user experience into next year.
Love it. Love it. Folks, thank you so much for joining me on the Master Your Business podcast. The episode has been packed with information and value and all sorts of things. So you guys are fantastic. I wish you loads of success in your UX journeys as well as your business, and look forward to seeing what happens in the user experience world. And Martin, if that crystal ball, if those predictions come true for the years ahead. So thank you again for joining us, and bye for now.
Great. Thanks, Deirdre.
Thank you so much for
Bye,
having
everyone.
us. That was a great talk. Thank you.